Good evening. Thank you so much. And thank you both to the Lower Beaver Neighborhood Association and the Merle Hay Neighborhood Association for hosting tonight's meeting. Thank you for having us both, and thank you all for coming out to be interested in our public schools and to be out here to make sure that the candidates represent the views that you have. My name's Patrick Dix. I am a father of two Des Moines Public School students. My boys are twins. They're freshmen at Roosevelt High School. I am an executive at a financial technology firm called Shazam. A lot of people are familiar with it because it was founded here back in the 70s. But before that, I was a broadcast journalist for 25 years. The last 16 of those were spent here in Des Moines as the morning news anchor for WHO TV. The number of people who start off with, why in the world would you want to run for school board these days, is pretty comical. That's the most common first question at the door. And for me, it starts with my boys, for sure. But my boys are going to be okay. For me, it's about the 31,000 other students in the Des Moines public schools, the opportunities that they are missing, that we are not presenting them, and then the lost potential that goes with that. Running started for me in the pandemic. I was disappointed in the lack of creativity that I saw from leadership, particularly in the administration at Des Moines Public Schools. And when I say that, I don't mean on the health outcomes. Masks are a good idea, distancing is a good idea, not being in school was a good idea at first, but then the lack of creativity and taking that opportunity to say, what are we going to do different? Who are we going to partner with in the community? I was really disappointed about not taking that opportunity and running with it to really transform our schools. I thought about running at that time, but really thought, I don't want to run against something. I don't want to be mad at something. That wasn't, for me, that wasn't a good reason to run. So I spent the next 2 years thinking about it, and we had a lot of conversations around our kitchen table, and we finally got to this idea of a vision for excellence, which is what you'll see on signs with my name on it. And it really is an idea that our family gets behind. We believe that the standards in the Des Moines Public Schools should be about excellence. And that may be different for everyone. That's not meet my standard and you have to get here. That's about being excellent every day. As a student walking in the door and being ready to learn. As a teacher walking in the door and knowing that you're going to change somebody's life today. As an administrator fighting for the resources that our kids need to learn. There are really three pillars to this for me. One is accountability. I think with the limited resources we have to be creative about how we use them. My bias would be to push funds toward the classroom as much as we can. If it were a choice between automating something in our administrative offices and putting resources in a classroom, my bias is going to be toward putting it in the classroom. But I also think as an at-large member of the board, accountability to me means I only have one lived experience, and my kids only went through one feeder system in the Des Moines schools. Accountability for me will be about being out in the community at neighborhood associations and gathering what I would call sort of roundtables so that I can listen and be a part of the different communities that we have in Des Moines. Communication and collaboration is the second pillar. As a Des Moines parent, I think we have to be much more intentional about the way we engage parents so that it is easier for them to be involved in Des Moines schools. I have some good examples, and I hope we'll get to talk about that. But then I think the other thing is we have to communicate with the community better. Board members should be evangelists for the Des Moines Public Schools. We should be out talking about the great things that our schools do and being honest about the challenges so that we can engage our community to find solutions. But I think that leads to collaboration then. I would insist that the city, the county, DART, Broadlawns, all be at the table together to collaborate and make sure that we are bringing the resources that we already have available here in our community to our students. And then I would go out and aggressively engage the business community to find more resources. We can go up to the state legislature all we want, and we should advocate for more funding for our students. But unless you've got 50 votes I don't know about, I feel like we're kind of shouting at the rain. I would go out and find that money through other creative partnerships, and again, I hope we have an opportunity to talk about that a little bit tonight because I have some ideas about that. And then the last pillar would be environment, and I don't mean the big E environment, although that's important. For me, it's about how kids treat one another, how they treat their teachers, and then what are we doing as adults to model behavior for for kids in schools. We live right behind Merrill Middle School, and I listen to the conversations of the kids out my kitchen window as they pass by. I don't like the way they're talking to each other. I don't like the way they're talking to their teachers. I think we need to set some expectations early on in their school journey and be consistent about them all the way through so that we are raising students and citizens that, first of all, have respect for one another. That's why I'm running.
Hi, I'm Logan Villhauer. I've been living in Des Moines for the past almost 14 years now. I'm a product of rural Calhoun County. Grew up in the middle of No Child Left Behind. Got to see what small schools consolidations did to classrooms, did to the experience. I went to Iowa Central Community College in Fort Dodge, Iowa. I got a job at a now defunct treatment center called Rabinett Treatment Center because I wanted to go into the field of helping people. So I worked there for 3 years going through my associate's degree and graduated with my degree in human services. From there, I went to Lutheran Services in Iowa to work with families going through DHS, so supervising visits, being involved, writing court reports, being the person on the ground helping families through dysfunction that they're going through. When I moved to Des Moines, I started working at a nonprofit, and by that time I decided I think I need a little bit of a change. So I took a step away from that and I went into pharmacy. I worked on the east side where I fell in love with the east side of Des Moines. I might live downtown, but I'm an east sider at heart. And from there I continued in the pharmacy. Then I moved to California for a while, and then I came back here, and now I'm looking for mission-driven work. Why I'm so interested in the schools is my parents just moved to Des Moines. I have 4 siblings that are students of the Des Moines Public Schools. We got Goodwill Elementary and North High. They didn't have a very good experience in their school system in rural Iowa, and they're so excited to come here and have all the resources that they have available to them. But my siblings are out of foster. They have trauma. They have behavior problems. They're not the easiest kids. That's who I've worked with my entire life. There are people that are left out of discussions, and I agree very much with Patrick. I don't want to run against anything or anyone, but unfortunately in the environment that we're in right now, as a queer person, I look at our schools and I see them as unsafe. I see them as places where children are traumatized every day just for who they are. It's not everybody, but if it's happening to a small group of people and it's allowed to go on, that's wrong. I want to get involved so I can be a voice for disaffected communities, for our queer parents, students, and teachers who don't have a voice or are represented in leadership anywhere in that system. That's kind of what it goes down to me. I'm somebody that is concerned with what's going on kind of around Des Moines. There's a rise of fascism. We're banning books. We're saying don't say gay. There's all these things that are very harmful. And the cruelty of those things is the point. So I have to run against something. I don't have the privilege or the luxury to not. I'm a member of a community who in recent years, our existence is on the ballot. That's not an experience that a lot of people in this room have. There was mention of life experience, and life experience that I bring to this is I'm a multifaceted queer person. I've spent most of my life in advocacy, and I really truly believe that yes, the board does need to be more engaged. We do need to focus on things like excellence. That does look like something for everyone else. We're in full agreement on that. It's just, is that the right voice? Is that the person that is representative of the community? When I was in Des Moines, when I became a drag queen, I got involved so I could do charity work, so I could raise money for scholarships, so I could be involved with my community. The saddle has a motto, never a cover, always a double, and then underneath it is always dedicated to community service. This is the way that I could get involved, the way I could give voice to people that may not have it, to lift things up. Because I do agree, the kids aren't treating each other very well. adults aren't treating each other very well either. And to be a better model, we have to step up to that. So having somebody that's going to model that, I would appreciate your support, and thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, gentlemen. We turn now to our questions for the evening, and I don't even have a number on these. There's about 15 of them. What we will do is I will ask the question, and then we'll give you about a minute to answer it. Here we go. Following a couple of high-profile incidents, the Des Moines School Board has made student safety a top priority. How will you, as a school board member, support this priority? We start with Mr. Villhauer.
As I said in my opening statement, safety is not just physical safety, it's also emotional safety. It's also being in a place where you can be yourself. We can partner in many different ways in order to keep our schools safe that, in my opinion, don't really need to involve the police. I think that we can creatively use our resources to staff more people that kids can talk to intervene. But ultimately, we have to dig down as a community and focus on those things where we need to treat each other better so that we can model those things, because over time, those will decrease. I came from a very small school. Thinking about school safety in the terms that we have to do now is a little alien to me. But I've been very, very up to date on all of the things that have been going on in schools, especially with violence and bullying. And I believe that I have a voice that can rise up and, speak out against them.
Thanks for the question. This one hits home. A couple of weeks ago, I started getting text messages from one of my two twins. Dad, we're on red level lockdown. They think someone's in Roosevelt with a gun. I'm in the closet of the music building. What do I do? Waiting. And I was in Kansas. I was on my way home from a work trip. And what do you do as a parent? The SRO program had its challenges. And I do think that there is a really good discussion to be had about how you put together a program that recognizes the harm that can come from putting an armed police officer in schools. However, I think run well as a partnership, the first contact with authorities at the elementary school level can be a positive one, and that relationship can be built all the way through their school experiences. So I would ask for a robust conversation about reimagining the SRO program in the Des Moines Public Schools.
Test. There we go. All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Second question. Since 2017 and 2018, DMPS's enrollment has declined by 7%. To what do you attribute this decline? And if elected, what will you do to help reverse it?
Me first? I think, for me, I think this is about communication. In part, it's about making sure that we are talking about the best things about Des Moines Public Schools. When you start to dig in, the stories you can tell people about the great things that are happening at Des Moines Public Schools, they're not known well. And so we need to be better about telling that story. But I also think we're gonna have to compete. Charter schools, school vouchers are a reality in our life now. And it is time for us to realize that we are competing against other districts. And I'm not afraid of that. I think Des Moines schools can be the school district of choice, not only in central Iowa, but it can be the example that everybody looks to in the entire state. We have to make that our attitude, and we have to make sure that when someone comes into town, Des Moines is the choice for them. It's not a realtor telling them, well, you better not buy a house in Des Moines. The schools aren't very good. We need to put an end to that right now so that we are the school district of choice. And I think that will help with the enrollment, make people know that this is a place to raise their family.
Kind of building off, yeah, we do have to compete. We're sending affluent people's children to school on the taxpayer dime at voucher schools. I mean, that infuriates me. We have to find ways to outcompete that, and we also have to organize to have those things go away. Like, those things are crippling public education. That's the point of them, to weaken us. We have to come together as a community. We have to be stronger. We have to show that Des Moines is the best place to be. There's amazing things going on in our school districts. We have our challenges, but we also have to follow rules. We have to provide for children with disabilities. We have to accommodate people. Private schools and a lot of voucher and charter schools, they don't. That's why people want to send them there, so that they don't have to have any exposure to diversity, so they don't have to interact with people that look different than them, think different than them. I mean, we have to outcompete that. We'll have to find ways to do it, and we'll have to be very creative, because they're going to keep taking our money.
Thank you. In April, then interim superintendent Matt Smith told Channel 5 News that DMPS enrollment decline necessitated a 2% reduction in teaching staff and a 5% reduction in support and central office staff for 2024 fiscal year. Now there are rumblings that schools will need to be closed because of the continued decline in attendance. If schools must be closed, how would you choose which schools will be affected, and how will you redraw the boundaries determining where each student will attend? We start with Mr. Villhauer.
As I said, I was a product of school consolidation in rural Iowa. It's terrible. It's bad when those things happen. The fact that we might have to do that, we need to look at that with the utmost lens of equity. We need to make sure we're not closing down a school that further burdens another one when we could find equitable districting and where we send those children. Ultimately, it'd be great to find partnerships to keep those schools open, to get extra funding, and we'll have to look into creative ways to do that. Like I said, we're just going to keep losing money as long as we don't have people that support public education and we don't view it as a community need. It's going to continue to go away.
I think as a board member, you have a responsibility to use the tax dollars that you have in a responsible way. And so my first reaction to that is there is a study underway right now of facilities in Des Moines, and I would let the data guide the first set of questions that I would have about that, and at least an initial discussion. But one of the things that I've learned is I've taken the last few months to go to as many buildings as I can, and I've asked about feeder patterns. One of the things that has come up over and over again is that our feeder patterns are kind of all over the place right now. And so there is an opportunity here to have feeder patterns that make a little bit more sense from elementary to junior high to high school, keeping kids together and not splitting them off into different buildings. I think the public-private partnership idea would be another way that I would handle this. I think you could go out into the private sector and you can fund some of the DMPS programs that we have right now with private money and free up money for the general fund.
Thank you. We've mentioned this already, but last year the state of Iowa passed schools choice legislation, effectively placing DMPS schools in direct competition with every public and private school in the area. What are some of the reasons why you believe families should choose to enroll their students at DMPS? We start with Mr. Dix.
Well, because we have things that other districts don't. Central Campus is the best example I can come up with. One of my sons is involved in the aviation program. Did you know that we're one of 4 FAA certified high school aviation programs in the United States? One is sponsored by Boeing, one by one of the flight schools in Florida, one by the airlines on the East Coast, and Des Moines Public Schools. We have some of the best programs, marine biology, you could go on, and they're the envy of the suburbs. We have to begin to tell those stories a little bit more so that we can talk about our strengths. And I believe our diversity as a district is our strength. I think that's kind of our superpower. We chose Des Moines schools for our kids. We had every choice in the world where we could settle down. My wife and I are from Chicago, and We decided Des Moines Public Schools, because of its diversity, was the place for our kids. That was the experience we wanted. So I think we need to harness that more, but I think we need to use the example of a program like Central Campus as a way to differentiate ourselves from other schools and compete.
I would go more along the lines of my thinking of our public schools have to follow the rules that make sure that everybody receives an equitable education. They have to follow the IEPs. They have to accommodate. Those schools don't. By showcasing that we're doing those things, along with all the amazing programs that we have, hopefully that will get them to compete. I do feel that I do very much agree with Patrick that, yeah, expanding some of the awareness of those programs, communicating them, building more of them, partnering with more private partnerships in order to get money in there. But ultimately, until we organize and against the idea of what school choice is, which it's just funding taxpayer dollars to fund wealthy children to go to school. If you can afford to go to private school, you can afford to pay for private school. It doesn't come on our tax dollars. If you want to have public money, you come and get a public education.
Thank you. With students hailing from 88 countries around the world and speaking nearly 100 languages, DMPS is by far the most diverse school district in the state. How will you, as a school board member, celebrate and encourage this diversity while also fostering unity across demographic lines? We start with Mr. Villhauer.
Can you repeat like how many and how many languages again?
88 countries, nearly 100 languages.
That feels amazing for me to hear. Growing up in small town Iowa where I wasn't exposed to a lot of diversity, I was drawn towards it. I chose Des Moines for diversity in a similar way. Celebrating people is so easy. You listen to them, you uplift them, you accommodate them. You celebrate the days, and by celebrating everybody, I think that de facto should foster unity. As we see how we come together, if we invest more in socio-emotional skills to teach children to communicate better, we can then hope that they would take that communication and turn it into understanding, to celebrate the things that unite us, and also celebrate our differences. You know, diversity is so important for me. I truly believe that the more point of view you have in a room, the more people that are listened to, and the more people that get to participate in that conversation, that's where we find our best solutions. That's where we're most creative. That's where we're at our strongest.
123 languages, I think, Maria. I think that was the last I heard from Des Moines Public Schools, and it is, you know, I just said diversity is our superpower. I was over at East, and I heard the principal told me that since the mid-90s, there was a 4% Latino population at East High School. Now it's more like 40% of the population at East High School. And she talked about how the community there was having to work with that shift in demographics. And all I could think of was, you're replacing one of the most loyal, tight communities in the Des Moines metro area. I don't think anybody who has met an East High School grad thinks anything but true loyalty to their high school. And you've now moved in one of the tightest, most loyal communities. It just fits. And I thought, that's not different. Those two are not different. And I think they're recognizing that there is not, that there are some similarities to the communities that are already here. Celebrating our differences is really important. I think the more we talk to each other, the more we're going to find out we believe in the same things, and the kind of community that we want here in Des Moines, it's about very similar things. So I think we can celebrate that diversity very easily. I think the people who are here want to. That's the other thing. I mean, I think if you're in the Des Moines Public Schools, you want to celebrate diversity.
Thank you. We continue on the subject of diversity. Despite the awesome diversity of DMPS students, diversity among its teachers and staff is lagging. How can DMPS make its staff better mirror the diversity present in the student body? We start with Mr. Dix.
You say that again for me?
Despite the awesome diversity of DMPS students, diversity among DMPS teachers and staff is sorely lacking. How can DMPS make its staff better mirror the diversity present in the student body?
I think we can start with our 31,000 kids that we have in the Des Moines Public Schools and showing them a path toward being a public school teacher in their community. I think that's first, because we have one of the biggest bases of a workforce coming out of high school right here in Des Moines. So showing kids and encouraging them to teach would be sort of the first part of it. The second is a proposal that I've made to a couple of people, and this is just sort of a crazy idea. I've been listening to the city council candidates talk about, we give $15,000 to any firefighter or police officer that'll live in the city of Des Moines. Why can't we replicate that program for teachers and recruit a wider base of teachers, give them $20,000 for a down payment on a house in a neighborhood that the city designates, help them build wealth and equity in their home, help them build their neighborhood up in exchange for 7 years teaching in the Des Moines Public Schools. I think that's a win-win for the community and for the teachers that we would bring in. I think we'd bring in a lot more teachers.
I think we could start just by hiring people that reflect that as teachers go out, just being concerned about equity and hiring practices and whether or not they mirror the student body that they're serving. I think that can be handled pretty easily just in the normal hiring process. I do think that, a stipend sounds like a great idea. But when you talk about like encouraging people to be teachers, I think that starts with us as a community and us on the board showing that we value them, that we respect their bargaining rights, that we want them to be able to make a living in the city that they live in. Not that they need to have kind of like a handout to be there in a way. I just think the simple answer is just hire more people that reflect that and finding a creative way to do that. And I don't think that that's necessarily a controversial thing to say or I'm kind of blown away by the simplicity of the question. Just hire more people that reflect it and just make a commitment to doing that.
Thank you. While attention is often focused on safety threats from outside the building, we've also heard stories of disruptive student behaviors inside the building affecting students' safety and learning, examples being bullying. If elected, what policies would you support to improve student discipline? Mr. Villhauer.
I'm really in the lens of kind of like the restorative justice approach. And in order for that to be successful, we really need to double down on socio-emotional development. Bullying doesn't start in school. Bullying's taught. It's something that you are almost indoctrinated to just being in the society. There's a tribalist element to it. Somebody's different than me. They scare me, so I'm going to push them away or I'm going to be mean. We need to really invest in those socio-emotional skills, programs that encourage kids to talk, mediating, so that they can build those skills that they might not be getting at home. Because the reality of what a lot of our parents in the city of Des Moines face is, I'm speaking as a millennial, people working multiple jobs. We don't have time to be engaged. It's so difficult, with prices rising, stuff like that, to stay engaged and do those things. The energy level that people have for their kids isn't the same as what I got when I was a kid. And that's reflected in how we see their development. Investing in that socio-emotional, teaching kids that they need to talk so that they can reach into their tool bag of social skills and not pull out hate or yelling or hands or guns.
So for me, this is a reality in our lives. In the 4th grade, one of my sons had his classroom cleared once a week on average throughout the year. The kids got so used to it, by the first couple of weeks in school, they all would get up, they'd move over to the other side of the room, and as the teacher was trying to deal with a disruptive student, they would all walk out unprompted to the library across the way. How many hours of learning were lost in that? One of the things that I learned in going to a lot of schools is at the elementary level, a lot of the principals have this one figured out. They set high expectations at the beginning of the school year. I was over at Willard Elementary on the east side, and the place is amazing. And the behavior of the students is unbelievable. And I said, what are you doing? And she said, we set high expectations and then we believe in them. She said, this is a parent problem, not a kid problem. We have to set expectations and then we have to follow through building to building. That's the other piece of this. I talked about feeder systems. There is no consistency in our expectation. Building to building, we can have different rules around expectations of behavior. And so I think having some consistency through your feeder pattern about what the rules are going to be and how I should behave would be a really good first step.
Thank you. Bilingual family liaisons are crucial links between families, schools, and even the larger community. How will you support and grow this essential role in our schools?
The question one more time, I'm sorry.
Bilingual family liaisons are crucial links between families, schools, and even the larger community. How will you support and grow this essential role?
One of the things that I was really pleased to see in the new SNAP app that's used to communicate to families is that there is a translator within the app. So a family can text an administrator, even if the administrator is not bilingual, they can use their own language to express themselves and to say, my kid is going to be late today, or I need to pick them up earlier, whatever it is. I was really happy to see that that we were using a program that did the translation on its own. I think that's part of meeting families where they are. I think it's incredibly important for us to acknowledge the diversity that we have. We have got to go to those communities and ask the best way for us to engage them and to make them, to bring them in to be a part of the Des Moines Public Schools. But that's the best example I've seen in visiting schools is that SNAP app is really good. Communication with families is key to engaging them in their kids' education, and I think we've got to do more of that. We've got to be better at meeting them where they are. That's our job as a district, not the parents' job necessarily. We have to make the user experience easier.
Yeah, right along with that, I heard about that app as well, and I thought that was an amazing use of technology. I think that by expanding that role, I think the superintendent with kind of loosening some hiring practices and starting to consider people with criminal backgrounds, I think that that would be a great way to identify people that might have served time or had issues in the past, but have now made the right amends to step up and be positive examples in those communities, finding ways to partner with them, whether that be with churches or community groups, to identify those people and bring them on. I agree very much. It's a conversation and going and asking those communities, how can we best help you? Because we can come up here and think about ideas of how to make things easier, but if it's not community driven, if it's not from the people, we're setting ourselves up for failure in that. But I do think by maybe looking at people that traditionally we wouldn't have looked at to fill those roles would be an amazing and creative approach to that.
Thank you. As we approach the second quarter of the 21st century, employers report that soft skills such as communication, teamwork, problem solving, and time management are instrumental in an employee's success. How will DMPS encourage the development of these skills among current and future students? Mr. Villhauer.
First, I think being honest about what skills are necessary in the workforce. But this is a great opportunity. Like, we need to be teaching kids the technology that they need to do these things. The future of what my brothers and sisters are going to be working at is going to look very, very different. We're already seeing it. More people are going to be working from home. People are going to need to be able to manage their time, and regulate themselves in order to do those things. So investing in the socio-emotional development, but also having our schools be at the forefront of what new technology is coming out. We should be teaching kids how to use AI to help them think, how to help them reduce the amount of work they have to do so they can get more things done. It's a great opportunity to also really showcase, like, this is what these are the skills you actually need to survive in the world. Because the thing that I hear from every single person that's graduated is, I don't think school actually prepared me for the skills that I need to know. This would be a great time to reimagine using technology to give opportunities for children to develop those skills so they can move into the workforce and not be so, I'm a millennial, we're all kind of stunted in that, but you know. Thank you.
As an executive in a tech company, I agree that technology will be important. As a father of 2 kids, I'm about to give the most unpopular answer that I will give tonight for my 2 14-year-olds, and that is, I think we should seriously look at the idea of cell phone cubbies or putting cell phones away when kids walk into class. You are there to learn. You are not there to be on your cell phone. I liked a system that I heard about at one of the schools I visited. It's the red, yellow, green. Red days, put your phone in the cubby. We are not using phones today. Yellow, we may use it as a calculator. There's a reason to have the phone. It has replaced the calculator that you and I carried into school. Green, we're doing stuff on our own today. You may need to research things with your phone. I liked that system, but I am leaning heavily toward the idea of much less technology. Those soft skills are not built when their faces are in a phone. Those soft skills are built when they can interact with one another and do the things that build relationships with people.
Respond to that?
30 seconds.
Oh, but as our world becomes increasingly more digital, those soft skills are developed through screens. People do therapy through them. People do business meetings, all those things. Like, those are where those skills are developed. I think that, like, I agree that there's a time and a place for those things, but by even just the suggestion of, like, I'm hesitant towards allowing children to have access to all the information that they could possibly ever need. We should be focusing on how to tell children how to use those things, how to think critically about their use of technology, and to have engaging lessons so that they don't feel they need to be on their phone, which student investment.
I'm going to need 30 seconds. We can stop with the dog whistles about limiting access to all the information that's available to them. The information that's available to them is in a lesson plan that a professional educator is using in class. The question was, how are we going to develop soft skills that in business are sorely lacking with people today? And so kids are getting plenty of technology, and they learn plenty about how to use technology and how to harness it. What they are missing is the soft social skills of relationships, of getting up in front of people and speaking, of relating to them in a social situation to build relationships. And that was the question, and I think that was the spirit of it. But let's not talk about limiting access to information, because no one on this stage has suggested in any way that anyone limit access to anything, that our students should be limited in access to anything.
Thank you.
That was a phrase I used. It was not a dog whistle. There was no ill intent towards that. The response is surprising because we actively live in a country right now where we are limiting things. We are banning books. There is a rise of fascism. Those are things that we can't ignore. So when we do limit, when we do that, what if we have the idea that you can only develop those soft social skills by getting up stage and talking has kind of a sense of, like, people have different life experiences and some people's brains work differently, where that person may not want to do that. Some people may develop amazing soft social skills and be able to be keyboard wizards and type and write and craft, and other people can't get up in front of something. So by setting that as the standard, I feel that that does some very long-reaching, unintentional harm.
It's a good discussion, and I just would say, working in a technology company with people who would describe themselves as introverts and who don't have those soft skills, what you end up with is a manager who can't deal with the socio-emotional needs of their team. Even as a tech wizard, you move up in your company and you end up supervising people, you end up leading a team, you end up leading a meeting. You don't have to get up on stage to do that. These are all skills that almost anyone in any career would need. And so as you move through your career, soft skills are important. And I think going back to the question, this is something businesses have identified that kids are not equipped with. And I think it's something that's really important for us to focus on.
Thank you. We're going to move on. I would like to point out that was the most lively exchange we've had in mayoral and school board here. So thank you guys very much for your conversation. In 2022, 75.6% of DMPS seniors graduated. This places DMPS among the lowest 10 school districts in the state for graduation rates. Moreover, in 2013, DMPS graduation rate was 79.4%. As a school board member, what will you do to reverse this trend and improve DMPS graduation rates? Mr. Dix.
So I'll go to an experience I had at Findlay Elementary. I visited Findlay and their By Degrees program. If you haven't been there and if you haven't toured the program, I think it's worth a couple hours of your time. Every morning they go into a morning meeting, and this is an elementary school, and instead of saying this is the kindergarten, this is the first grade, they say this is the class of 2040. And they yell, "We are the class of 2040. It gets those kids thinking in a completely different way about their education. This is the end that I'm going after. I'm not just going to school because they're telling me to. I'm going to school because we are keeping an end in mind. It is an amazing program, and the phrase that I loved that I heard that morning is, we are giving these students a vision of the future that they will build for themselves. That's how you graduate more kids, is give them a vision of the future that they will build more themselves. More mentorship, more internship programs, more partnerships with the businesses in our community so that we can say, come out of Des Moines Public Schools, go to DMAC for a couple of years, go through a training in the trades, and we can put you right into a job because we know it's available.
I think that declining graduation rates are kind of indicative of a lack of investment in our schools, a lack of community investment, lack of financial. Thank you. There's no easy solution to that. I really do like that degrees program that Patrick talked about, and the idea of setting that goal and telling children that it is achievable and that you can do it. I feel we have a little different experiences from when we graduated high school and when we graduated college. It's really difficult for me to look at a child in the face and tell them to go to college, that'll fix everything, or go to college, that's what you need to do. Because that's what I was told all growing up. And I did it, and I don't really like what I had to get from it. What I see kids looking at now, especially when we get to high school, they're looking at the reality of what the world is. You know, they might not necessarily need that degree. I want them to get it. We need to get it. We need an educated population. And the way we do that is by investing in the schools, making them places people want to be, which would be making them safe spaces for people to be themselves.
Thank you. This next question is a little bit challenging. I had to do some dictionary work because it comes from an actual educator. They use big words that I don't know. In a school setting, Tier 2 refers to supports offered to students who are at risk for developing more serious unwanted behavior before those behaviors start. Educators that I have spoken with indicate that they are in need of more resources to support these students in order to prevent them from developing these more serious behaviors and ultimately to succeed in life. How will you ensure that educators have the Tier 2 resources they need to help students succeed, Mr. Villhauer?
It kind of goes back to the theme at night of investment in our schools. We are going to have to be very creative about allocating any money to that. Those programs are essential. As a brother of two siblings that have behavioral disorders, you know, being able to get those supports, and if we are able to find ways to prevent them, I love working proactively. But the bottom line of that is we're going to have to find the money for that. We're going to have to mobilize outside of just on the school board. The investment in our schools also comes with parents getting involved in voting, so that we can have people that invest in our education, so that we can have more resources for that.
I'm reminded of a line from The West Wing. It's one of my favorite shows, and the line is, "You want more school funding? So do I. Where's it coming from?" Because it isn't coming from the state legislature. Unless you are going to turn around 3/4 of the state, the supermajority that exists there, you are shouting at the rain. So one of the ways that I would get more funding for the schools is I would start going up and talking about programs that we could get funding for that would get more support at the state legislature. Speaking in a way that would get us, maybe not for the general fund, but there might be individual programs that lawmakers might be willing to fund. But I think the second way is you've got to look at raising values of property. We already are at a 40% disadvantage because of the government buildings here. I'd put that question to lawmakers. Why is it okay for you to occupy our buildings in Des Moines that we can't get property tax off of, and you won't give us any accommodations? We are different than any other city in the entire state, and we need to make that argument to lawmakers.
Like many school districts across the country, DMPS struggles with teacher retention. There are many factors which contribute to this, but if elected, what will you do to attract high-quality new teachers and keep the tremendous teachers that we already have? Mr. Dix.
So you've already heard the proposal that I'm going to make about the $20,000 down payment. Down payment for a house. What I was told by teachers that I spoke with is we do a great job in Des Moines of having wonderful benefits. We have, world-class benefits, and that's great for our teachers, and they've chosen that in their negotiations. But we fall short a little bit on salary when we're competing with the suburbs. So what if we weighed that down a little bit for a 23-year-old teacher who may not be so worried about his benefits at 23 because he's healthy, and so he's going to take the more pay right now? What if we could get him a mortgage on a house and a down payment on a home? He builds some equity in his life, and by the time he's done with that 5 or 7 year commitment we ask from him, maybe now he's talking about having kids, starting a family. Now the benefits are more important, and now you've got a retention of a teacher, not only an attraction, but a retention of a teacher. You have to come up with creative ideas to give us a little bit more of an advantage than some of the other districts around the state that might be able to pay a little bit more.
Yeah, that's a tricky one. Our teachers do have amazing benefits. I was talking with the DMEA and going over theirs because my father got a packet because he works for the school. And if we can maintain those, if we can show dedication to teachers, if we can show we're not going to mess with their bargaining rights, if we show that we value them, and looking into creative solutions like your idea, Pat, that's a great idea. I have a question where the money would come from, kind of the same way of whatever question we have with that is where does that come from? But also, there's no easy answer to that one. I'm coming back at looking at it from a school consolidation standpoint, where I saw good teachers that couldn't stay, teachers that I felt had a lot to offer the district that I grew up in, that they just couldn't stay because they closed the building. Off the top of my head, I'm just going to be honest. I don't got a solution to that one. That's, to me, I think something that on a board we engage the community, we listen to what they want from teachers, we stand up for our teachers and protect them in our board roles, but ultimately I believe that would fall to the superintendent, and we would just hold them accountable to develop those programs.
Thank you. This one's going to be interesting. This was also suggested by an educator in one of our schools here in the neighborhood, so I won't take credit for any of this one, but we'll see how this works out. Please describe a typical day in the life of a Des Moines middle school student. Mr. Villhauer.
Let me go in the way back machine. I have a little bit of advantage. I do have 2 siblings in middle school right now, so I think I'll use my sister Autumn. So she'd get up and walk to school. She'd go enjoy her classes, but the thing that she is most looking forward to is her volleyball practice. She just got moved from B team to A team, so she's been really hitting that. which has helped her in her confidence and also helped her start to improve her grades a little bit as she's new and making new friends. So I see her in a big, huge environment where she's only been there since the beginning of the school year, coming from a class of probably like 20 or 30 people. So I imagine that I can put myself and have empathy for that isolation. So I go in and I really want to just double down on those socio-emotional skills, that we don't other people that are different or new. We bring them in. Hopefully she's making friends. Hopefully she's safe. And hopefully she gets to her volleyball game. And hopefully I can go to one.
Saying anything about a typical Des Moines student is pretty hard, but I think the typical Des Moines student goes to school and may not have had a meal. And so it's incredibly important that we provide the breakfast that you see at most of the Des Moines public schools that I've gone into. There's a breakfast rolled into so that kids can go into the day with some fuel so that their brains work. The other thing that was pointed out to me is that if you come from less than ideal circumstances, you may be in defensive mode, basically, that your brain is in fight or flight mode. You can't learn that way. I think the typical Des Moines student, if we were honest with ourselves, may be coming to school that way. And so I think it's critical for us to acknowledge that and then help lower those barriers so that when they walk in the door, they are ready to learn. It's not just magic that everybody walks in the door and is ready to learn. We have to recognize that kids come from all kinds of different circumstances, and those circumstances will affect the way they approach school in that day. I think the first 10 minutes of their typical day is a really important one. How ready are they to be a part of the school day?
Thank you, gentlemen. This is the last question that I have on my list. And again, I think it'll be an interesting one to hear. The best leaders are present among the people that they lead. As a school board member, what is your plan to be present in DMPS facilities? Mr. Dix.
Well, the first thing would be to make sure that I can be present in Des Moines facilities, and I think that's going to take a little bit of a change of the way we approach things at the board table. Making sure that I can visit a building when I want to visit a building and that I don't have to ask permission to visit that building is going to be a really important piece of what I would argue for. I would go to neighborhood associations. I would visit buildings every year. You couldn't do probably the full Grassley and visit all of the Des Moines schools every year. Maybe you could get that done. But I would, just like I have over the last 3 or 4 months, commit to visiting as many buildings I can, but then also gathering these roundtable groups. A group of families who have kids with special needs, a group of Latino families, a group of African American families, a group of families from the north side, from the east side. Visit with them twice a year to just listen to what they have to say and make sure that that listening then informs what you hear at the board, because you're not able to deal with the day-to-day. That's the job of the professional educators that we pay. Your job as a board member is to steer the overall direction of the school and be a partner to the superintendent in his work that way.
Mr. Villhauer.
Showing up. Going to every board meeting, getting involved in neighborhood associations, going to events, going to football games, being present in the community. Showing up is really what we're doing. We're showing up for our communities. We want to hear your voice. I can't, like I said, can't go to everywhere, can't be everything all the time. I'd commit to visiting like at least a school a week. I mean, we can easily fit that in a schedule. 1 day a week to just go and visit schools, go talk to people, ask how they're doing, be involved in all of the big groups, be on the mailing list, have an open email where people can send you whatever question they want, whatever concern that they have, and just being and projecting an air of approachability. Open door. I'm your elected official. You have access to me. What's going on? How can I help? What are your concerns? This is what we're trying to do. And having that open dialogue constantly.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your time this evening, for your responses, for making us think a little bit at times. We appreciate your...
Any questions from the audience? Do we have time for that, or are we done at 7?
We're not going to take any questions tonight because that was we set this up. But if you have questions for them and they have a second to stick around, then you can ask
We do.
questions. Okay.
Thank you.
What I will do is I will simply remind you that the election is on November the 7th, and the school board election is typically on the back side of the ballot. So make sure to turn it over so that you can make sure to vote on that part. Thank you so much for coming this evening. Let's hear it one more time for our candidates.